While toiling away in the office like a diligent worker, Itsuki Shinomiya, the main character of the manga, frequently ponders what he would do if he found himself in a different world. His physical well-being is deteriorating as he labors tirelessly, resembling a lifeless entity devoid of rest. He fails to save any money, and his existence lacks a clear purpose. As he awaits his metro, he contemplates these thoughts. He refrains from indulging in anime and manga, but remains aware of the prevailing trend known as the unparalleled universe, prompting him to contemplate his potential role in a parallel universe. He grapples with the decision of becoming an adventurer or a hero, profoundly fatigued by his current job. Desiring a life free from the shackles of work, he drifts into slumber while immersed in these thoughts. He awakens abruptly to the sound of an announcement. The metro has arrived, and he hurries to board it, relieved that he hasn't missed it. Upon entering the train, he is greeted by a melodious voice. Before him stands a girl, dressed in unconventional attire and sporting spectacles. Intrigued, Itsuki inquires about her identity, to which the girl reveals herself as a goddess and conveys that he is destined for a parallel universe. Itsuki, convinced that this is some elaborate prank, brushes it off and proceeds to exit the place. However, in an instant, the girl snaps her fingers, revealing her true divine nature. She explains that Itsuki has passed away, and now she intends to grant him a second chance at life, a fresh start. The goddess offers to bestow upon him a skill that would prove invaluable in his new life, presenting him with a plethora of skill options to choose from. Still reeling from the shock of his own death, Itsuki hesitates. He is on the brink of entering a parallel universe, and he recognizes the significance of selecting the right skill. Initially tempted by combat skills, he soon realizes what he truly needs to pick. The card indicates that he will lead an enjoyable second life, but the goddess insists there are superior choices available. Nevertheless, Itsuki remains resolute in his decision to select that particular option. With a radiant burst of light, the goddess readies to transport him to the first town of the new world. As Itsuki opens his eyes in this unfamiliar realm, he hears unsettling sounds around him. In response, he swiftly spins around and dashes away in a frenzied sprint. Itsuki has certainly not anticipated such a hostile reception. A colossal, nightmarish sandworm looms before him, poised to strike. In the midst of this perilous moment, he questions how he has ended up in this situation after choosing a seemingly peaceful and enjoyable life. Suddenly, a mysterious figure materializes and expertly cleaves the sandworm in two, rescuing Itsuki from imminent danger. Dusting himself off, Itsuki expresses his gratitude to the man who has just saved his life. The stranger introduces himself as Hayato Hayakawa, revealing that he too is a drifter, reincarnated into this unfamiliar world. Then he notices that there are 4 other girls accompanying him, and some of them aren't even human. The alternate universe has the appearance of a harem-like world. Itsuki feels a touch of nostalgia. He is also in Japan in this particular world. They all climb into a chariot to head to the town. Later, Hayato inquires about the unique skill Itsuki has chosen when he encounters the goddess. Itsuki grins and assures them that they will be amazed when he reveals his skill. He extends his hand and manifests a coin. His skill allows him to generate money based on his level. As a result, he no longer needs to work for a living. The revelation surprises the others. Hayato inquires about his plans from that point onward. The abilities bestowed upon him by the goddess are merely suitable for earning a little money and practicing agriculture. He has no desire for adventure or battling monsters. When Hayato proposes the idea of joining a guild, Itsuki is thrilled to consider it. Hayato explains that he can even focus on honing his skills in alchemy if combat doesn't appeal to him. Itsuki notices that they are finally approaching the town. They leave Itsuki there and continue on their way to their destination. Itsuki understands that his first step is to find a guild. He intends to use the coins he produces to acquire the things he needs and enjoy a peaceful life surrounded by beautiful women. However, he had no sense of urgency and planned to take things slow, avoiding unnecessary stress. His life in this parallel universe had not begun as he had envisioned. Initially, he satisfied his hunger by purchasing some skewered beef. Afterwards, he decided to consult the map Hayato had given him, contemplating the possibility of joining an alchemy guild. The beef was remarkably delicious. As he strolls along the street, savoring his beef, a girl suddenly approaches him. Her eyes are filled with desperation. She appears to be a cat girl with cat ears, a tail, and torn-out clothing. Her youthful appearance is quite noticeable. Itsuki approaches her and asks if she is lost or needs assistance, even offering her some of his food. However, there is no response from her side. It is evident that the girl is starving, and she wears an iron collar around her neck, a clear indicator that she is a slave. Her master, the slave trader, arrives and informs Itsuki that he can't feed slaves without permission. The girl's youthful appearance raises doubts about her being a slave, prompting the slave trader to inquire if Itsuki is interested in purchasing her. He introduces himself as Yasis, but Itsuki immediately declines his offer. He feels disheartened that such practices exist in this world. In an attempt to help, Itsuki distracts the slave trader and discreetly gives his beef to the girl before quietly departing. His next destination is the Alchemy Guild, where he recalls Hayato's advice to create guild cards first. Upon entering the guild, Itsuki encounters an elderly woman who is casually enjoying a long pipe cigar. She straightforwardly inquires about his purpose for being there. Itsuki explains that he wishes to join the Alchemy Guild, introducing himself and mentioning that Hayato has informed him about the place. To his surprise, the old woman assures him that he doesn't need to present any letter of introduction, as she is already aware of his arrival. She has heard about his past issues with the aristocracy before handing him the card. When Itsuki takes the card from her, she seizes his hand, and suddenly it bursts into flames. After the fire has been extinguished, he finally acquires the guild card from her, and the elderly woman informs him that there will be no special exam since he is just beginning. Following this, she brings up the registration fee, which amounts to 5,000 nar. Itsuki accepts her conditions and requests her to teach him alchemy, prompting the old woman to suggest that he address her as the lovely Reinrich. Itsuki repeats his request, this time addressing her as beautiful Reinrich. Reinrich, noticing his repeated request, suspects that he isn't entirely truthful. She guesses that he might already possess some alchemy skills. In order to assess his abilities, she decides to test him. Leading him to the laboratory, she instructs him to create basic potions manually. Itsuki questions why he should do it manually when he could use his skills. However, she reiterates that he needs to start with the fundamentals. Although he can employ magic instantly, lacking knowledge means the final product's quality will suffer, and he might even fail. Therefore, practice is the most effective way to achieve perfection. She proceeds to explain to him the fundamental principles of alchemy: disassembly, synthesis, and reconstruction. She emphasizes that grasping these three concepts is essential for further learning. This information closely mirrors what Itsuki has encountered in manga and anime. She advises him to begin with disassembly, as it forms the foundation of alchemy. Their training commences, with Reinrich initiating instruction on how to disassemble objects. For Itsuki, the process is becoming increasingly challenging. He finds himself doing exactly what he had hoped to avoid: hard work. Nevertheless, he is also gaining knowledge and producing numerous potions. During this period, a young girl enters the room. Reinrich instructs her to prepare a meal for Itsuki, as he is extremely fatigued and low on energy. Itsuki begins to relish the meal prepared by the young lady, and she also brings him some tea. As they eat, Reinrich discloses to Itsuki that she sees potential in him and advises him against working at her establishment. His response is one of shock and speechlessness, prompting Reinrich to chide him not to make such a disgusted expression. She assures him that she will arrange for a bed for him to stay temporarily. The following day, she intends to visit the Adventurous Guild to sell the potions he has crafted. Despite their low-grade quality, these potions are consistently in demand. Reinrich inquires if he needs money, and Itsuki quickly replies with a resounding yes without any hesitation. The following day, as they are at the market, a man is pilfering another person's belongings. Armed with a knife, the man hurries through the street, instilling fear in everyone he encounters. However, his path intersects with two girls who stand their ground, halting his advance. When the thief attempts to retaliate, a girl named Aina swiftly brings him down to the ground. The other girl, a cat-like character, expresses her admiration for Aina's courageous fight. When Aina inquires if she has gone too far, the cat girl reassures her that she hasn't, as the man is still alive. The people in the vicinity immediately recognize Aina and Sorte from the Red Front. Together, they retrieve the stolen item from the thief and return it to its rightful owner. Meanwhile, Itsuki and Reinrich are alerted by the commotion. Reinrich informs Itsuki that he will be at the Adventurer Guild if Itsuki follows the road straight ahead, and they go their separate ways. After traveling for some time, Itsuki finally arrives at the guild. Itsuki had never imagined he would establish business in the new world so quickly. Things have been proceeding quite smoothly thus far. Itsuki enters the Adventurers Guild, carrying a bag provided by Hayato that can magically store a significant amount in a small space. His shock is palpable when he surveys the environment within the establishment. Many inebriated individuals fixate their gaze on him as he makes his entrance. Itsuki exerts his best efforts to appear unflustered, aware of the intense scrutiny from behind. A staff member, a young woman, approaches Itsuki and inquires if he requires any assistance. In response, Itsuki expresses his desire to sell some potions. He carefully arranges all of his potions on a nearby table and asks her to offer him the best deal she can. The atmosphere in the room remains tense, with the onlookers' intense stares making it all the more uncomfortable. The girl carefully inspects Itsuki's potions and regretfully informs him that they are all of low quality. Just then, a bald man approaches and asks the girl if there are any quests available for them. In the process, he accidentally pushes Itsuki, causing all of his potions to shatter. Laughter erupts among the men present, making it evident that they have no intention of allowing Itsuki to sell his potions there. They mockingly refer to him as the pharmaceutical guild seller. Itsuki is left bewildered and hurt by the intense animosity directed at him. They can't fathom why they despise him so vehemently, considering the hard work he has put into crafting those potions. The situation becomes even more serious when the bald man goes too far by grabbing Itsuki, pushing him to the edge of his patience. Raleigh makes an effort to intervene and calm both parties down, but the bald man draws his sword, leaving Itsuki feeling infuriated. Not only have his potions been spoiled, but now this person is trying to harm his well-being, increasing Itsuki's determination to confront him. The confrontation is about to escalate to a dangerous level when Aina steps in, putting a halt to their hostilities. Sorta, recognizing the need for a quick exit, takes Itsuki's hand and urges him to leave. The onlookers in the vicinity recognize Aina and Sorte, particularly captivated by Aina's striking beauty. Itsuki quickly clarifies that he is not a member of the Pharmaceutical Guild, but belongs to the Alchemy Guild. He points to the bag he carries as evidence and even displays his guild card to verify his affiliation. The bald man acknowledges his error. Personally apologizes to Itsuki, emphasizing that their intention was never to cause trouble for the Alchemy Guild. Itsuki reassures Aina that it wasn't merely a misunderstanding, but a mistake on the part of the man who failed to check the facts before acting. He also mentions the considerable loss of his potions. Sorta scolds the man for not thanking Aina for her intervention, but Aina defends him, stating that it wasn't his fault. She then decides to compensate Itsuki for the potions that have been destroyed. Aina appeals to Itsuki for forgiveness. Then, Reinrich also arrives at the scene, and everyone recognizes her, though she doesn't appear to be in a good mood. She informs them that their project has been ruined, and she won't overlook it this time. Aina requests that they contact the guildmaster without delay. Itsuki approaches her and expresses his apologies for failing to handle the potions properly. Reinrich reassures him that it wasn't his fault and advises him not to blame himself. However, Itsuki continues to feel deep regret. Reinrich delivers the news that the Alchemy Guild will no longer work with them, leaving everyone in shock. Their only alternative would be to purchase the potions from the overpriced Pharmaceutical Guild, an option they are not keen on. The bald gentleman also extends an apology to Itsuki for his earlier aggressive behavior, admitting that he has no knowledge of Itsuki's identity. Aina also offers her apologies to Reinrich and inquires about how they can make amends. Reinrich then reveals the presence of a letter of introduction from Hayato, the renowned Dragon Slayer hero, which astonishes Itsuki. He has no prior knowledge of conversing with such a prominent celebrity. Itsuki then pledges to compensate with a payment of 1 million nar for the incurred losses. Reinrich argues that a sum in the single-digit million nar range wouldn't suffice his compensation and expresses reluctance to pay such a hefty amount. Even Itsuki begins to question if the request is excessive, prompting Reinrich to hush Sorte, emphasizing her respect for Hayato. Itsuki finds himself uncertain about who the true victim is in this situation. Aina offers to find a way to raise the required amount. Sorte remains opposed to the idea, as Faye doesn't have the means to contribute. Aina then shocks everyone by proposing to become their indentured servant in order to earn the money and settle the debt, leaving both Sorte and Itsuki equally astonished. Everyone attempts to dissuade Aina from making this drastic decision, highlighting the potential negative consequences, such as a decline in the Adventurer Guild's reputation if she becomes a slave. Aina reassures them, asserting that people will always require the services of the Adventurer Guild. Faris expresses the greatest concern and pleads with Aina not to make a rash choice. Aina embraces Faris and assures her that everything will turn out fine. Itsuki once again voices his disapproval of Reinrich's decision, but she remains steadfast in her stance. Sorta raises her voice, vehemently objecting to the idea that her sister should become a slave just because some potions were destroyed. Sorta insists that, as a knight, she can take care of herself. Sorta questions who will manage their guild in Aina's absence. Aina once more implores Reinrich for forgiveness, but Reinrich firmly declines. Itsuki starts to wonder why he came here initially, hoping for a carefree and simple life, only to end up in the opposite situation. He contemplates how to handle such a lovely person as a companion instead. However, he ultimately refuses again, stating that slavery won't solve their problems. He firmly declines to keep Aina as a slave, and declares his intent to work even harder to produce more potions. Aina initiates an argument, asserting that she would excel as a servant and be valuable. Itsuki responds by stating that he cannot accept a lovely girl like her as his servant. Upon hearing this, Aina blushes. Reinrich remains eager to acquire a girl from the Red Front for his labor. In an attempt to persuade Itsuki, she insists that he will require much more assistance in his future work, and accuses him of being too lenient. However, Reinrich is determined not to return empty-handed. She instructs Aina to come to her residence the following morning. Following that, she pays no attention to Itsuki or anyone else's words. Thus, they depart. Itsuki, feeling incredibly weary, never anticipated that his life here would be so laden with challenges. He heads directly to his bed, yearning for some rest. However, he is abruptly jolted awake by a voice, and the sensation of touching something that leaves his hand feeling numb, accompanied by a pleasant fragrance. Itsuki is astounded when he realizes what it is. Aina, only half-dressed, lying in his bed. Itsuki panics and swiftly vacates the bed, demanding an explanation for why she was in his bed. Aina responds that Reinrich informed her that this is what a slave should ideally do. Itsuki's irritation with Reinrich grows, and he closes his eyes, instructing Aina to dress herself. Aya, in desperation, inquires why he is not content with her, and if something is amiss. Suddenly, Sorta enters the room and aims a kick at Itsuki. She believes that he is coercing Aina into these actions, prompting them both to engage in a heated skirmish, resembling a cat-and-mouse chase. Aina attempts to clarify to Sorta that it's all a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Reinrich watches the scene unfold, reveling in the chaos and reminiscing about her own youth. Itsuki Shinomiya, a man dispatched to a new world by a goddess, encounters enormous caterpillars and experiences harassment. Finally, he encounters a peculiar girl who seems to have the intention of becoming his servant. Aya tells him that he should begin to take a fair amount of responsibility for her, since she is now under his care. Persistently addressing him as master, Itsuki expresses his discomfort, finding it unsettling. She conveys to him that she can employ different terms such as lord, honey, darling, or my liege. Subsequently, she suggests calling him her precious one. She elucidates that her culture dictates referring to their spouse in such terms after their first night together. Sorta passionately declares her intent to reclaim her freedom, stating that she won't require such titles soon. Later that day, as they stroll through the streets, Itsuki inquires of Sorte whether she genuinely desires to purchase Aina's freedom. Aina herself informs Sorte that she couldn't go through with it, as it would cast doubt on her sincerity. Itsuki reassures them that it wouldn't pose a problem for him since he needs money anyway. However, Aina emphasizes to Sorte that while she appreciates her concern, her decision remains unwavering. Even Itsuki couldn't fathom why she was so resolute. Sorta firmly states that she won't leave Aina alone and plans to accompany her wherever she goes. Her intention is to ensure Itsuki doesn't attempt anything inappropriate. Itsuki then asks Aina if she still plans to visit a person who deals in slaves. He couldn't comprehend why Aina was behaving this way despite her seemingly flawless demeanor. He is completely baffled by her actions. Meanwhile, at the Adventurous Guild, a sense of sorrow and despondency envelops everyone. The bald man carries profound regret for Aina's enslavement, feeling responsible for it. However, Faris attempts to elucidate that Aina has entrusted them with running the guild even in her absence. Thus, they need to fulfill their responsibilities diligently instead of succumbing to melancholy. Upon hearing Faris's words, the spirits of everyone in the guild are rekindled, and they enthusiastically prepare to resume their work. Later that day, Reinrich encounters a short, elderly man they are acquainted with. The old man owns an armor shop. Reinrich inquires about the state of his business, to which the man replies that it is prospering. He also asks about her new apprentice, and whether they are performing their duties satisfactorily. Meanwhile, Itsuki, Aina, and Sorte arrive at the slave trader's residence. It is an enormous mansion. They can't fathom that a slave trader is the owner. Ibe enters and begins searching for the proprietor. A lady greets them there, speculating that Reinrich had sent them. The exterior of the mansion is stunning, but the interior surpasses Yasis, the slave trader. Itsuki encounters them at the start, and he greets them. He is also aware that Reinrich has dispatched them. Then the lady serves some tea to Itsuki, with her upper body partially exposed. Itsuki perspires while observing her. She is even more attractive than Aina. Yasis observes all of this and inquires of Itsuki if he has a liking for Wendy, the lady. Itsuki blushes and clarifies that it isn't what it seems. Yasis reveals that her name is Wendy, a product of their company. Itsuki is taken aback, finding it hard to believe that such a beautiful girl could be a slave. Sorta pinches his thigh and urges him to continue the conversation. Yasis then tells Aina that he will evaluate her worth as a companion, mentioning that they are in relatively good condition and are affiliated with the Red Front. Surprisingly, he also considers Sorta in his assessment. She objects, saying she isn't part of the original arrangement. Yasis replies by explaining that Reinrich has informed him of the total amount of money involved, and Aina alone won't be valuable enough. He proposes that Sorta could also reduce her financial responsibility by becoming a companion. Upon hearing this, Sorta is prepared to compromise. But now, Aina becomes worried. Sorta reassures her, telling her that everything will be all right as they will be together forever. Wendy guides them toward the exit, and Aina and Sorte follow her. Meanwhile, Yasis provides Itsuki with some information about slavery in this world. He explains that there are 3 types of slaves: debt slaves who owe money to someone, criminal slaves who are captured after committing a crime, and special slaves who become slaves for royal, tribal, or unique reasons. In Itsuki's case, he will be a debt slave. Wendy inquires of Aina if she is skilled in combat since she is an adventurer. Aina replies affirmatively. Wendy then asks if she has any experience in cooking. Aina replies in the negative, and Sorta replies that she can if it's cooking while camping. Then Wendy asks them to remove their clothing. Aina and Sorta are shocked to hear this, but they have no other choice. So they take their attires off and stand in their underwear, feeling very uncomfortable. Wendy tells them to turn around. When Aina turns around, she starts groping. She starts touching her chest and private parts, and tells her that if Itsuki demands her to do something, she should be able to do it. Even if it's physical, then she guesses that they both are still virgins. Sorta then pushes Wendy away. On the other hand, Yasis is done explaining Itsuki all the terms of the slavery. A moment later, Wendy arrives there with Aina and Sorte. They are blushing and feeling very shy. Itsuki asks Aina what happened to them. Aina tells him not to ask as it's embarrassing. Itsuki asks her again, and Sorta starts beating Itsuki and shouts at him for asking even after she tells him not to ask. So their stats are as follows. Aina can combat and engage in conditional intercourse, and Sorte can only combat and nothing else. So basically, both of them are great fighters, but nothing more than that. Yasis is disappointed to see Sorte's stats when he tells him that it's because she is underage. So this one cannot engage in intercourse. Sorta shouts that it's none of their business. Wendy then tells them that she has personally touched more places and found out that it will be difficult to have intercourse with Sorte. So Yasis gives the final assessment. It's 6 million nar for Aina and 4 million nar for Sorte. And together they are now equal to the compensation amount. It's now time to make the contracts. He tells them all to enter the circle below and put their hands together. Thus, they follow Yasis's instructions obediently. Yasis proceeds to recite some incantations, resulting in the formation of a contract between them. Although it causes slight discomfort, the contract is now firmly established. Yasis informs them that the contract prohibits the slaves from harming their master, serving as a protective measure. Curious, Itsuki asks Sorte to test it. Without hesitation, Sorte launches an attack, who immediately starts rolling on the ground while clutching her head. Yasus explains that attempting to strike their master will result in a severe headache. Mockingly, Itsuki warns Sorte that any violent behavior will lead to disciplinary action, prompting a chuckle from Aina. She remarks to both of them that it seems like they are enjoying each other's company, to which Itsuki and Sorte simultaneously protest that they are not. Following this exchange, the three of them depart from the mansion, satisfied that the contract has been successfully established. Itsuki, unsure of their next steps, turns to Aina for guidance. She advises that they should report to Gil now. On the same night, in the city suburbs, Hayato and his crew set up camp in a designated area. While Hayato is away searching for food, the four girls accompanying him patiently wait for his return. One of them has a strong craving for meat. The elf girl, coming out of the bath partially undressed, makes the others feel uneasy. She insists they should exclude meat from the soup as she plans to consume it separately. Another member of the group cautions her against walking around half-naked, fearing that Hayato might see her in such a state. The elf girl responds by telling the human girl, Letty, not to overreact. She then suggests that Letty should also bathe in the spring, hinting that she has an unpleasant odor, leading to an argument between the two of them. Meanwhile, Hayato sits in silence at a spot, and Chris approaches him, draping a blanket over him to shield him from the chilly weather. Hayato shares his thoughts, expressing his curiosity about how Itsuki is faring. At the same time, Itsuki is at the Adventurers Guild, enjoying a lively gathering with the same individuals who had previously mistreated him. They are all extending their apologies for their past actions, seeking forgiveness from Itsuki. He responds by mentioning the numerous experiences he had in his previous world. The men recollect that Itsuki had been a drifter, and they begin to envision a brighter future together, anticipating remarkable potions from Itsuki. Sorte, on the other hand, is seething with anger at the sight of the men enjoying themselves, the same individuals responsible for their enslavement. Her inebriation heightens her emotions, and she cries out loudly, suggesting that Itsuki has intentions towards them that are unspeakable in public. Itsuki is taken aback by Sorte's statement and firmly reassures her that he will never entertain any inappropriate thoughts concerning her due to her youthful appearance. Sorte grows increasingly agitated and questions Itsuki if he understands the downsides of having a well-endowed chest, pointing out the difficulties Ana faces, such as the need for larger, heavier armor that costs more. Itsuki, also under the influence of alcohol, responds that he doesn't care since they are now his slaves. He goes on to express his weariness of such complex relationships and declares that he will refrain from discussing such matters with him any further. His new friends invite Itsuki to continue drinking, and Sorte cautions Aina not to trust him too readily. However, Aina observes Itsuki genuinely enjoying the company of even those who had previously disliked him. This causes her to reconsider her impression of him, and she blushes, realizing he might not be the person she had thought. Itsuki, in the meantime, is beginning to appreciate the beauty of this unfamiliar world. When someone raises concerns about the expense of having a late-night party, Itsuki smiles and demonstrates his ability to conjure coins, reassuring them. Itsuki proudly displays the single silver coin he has conjured, even though it isn't enough to cover the expenses. As the night wears on and more drinks are consumed, everyone in the bar eventually falls asleep. Itsuki finds himself contemplating how he has encountered so many people in this new world, and how things are improving with each passing day. The fact that he had died in his previous life, and now finds himself experiencing all of this in a new one, is still something he struggles to fully comprehend. Itsuki has two slaves who are also beast adventurers from the Red Front, and they assist him in gathering alchemical ingredients. His level is steadily increasing, and his work proceeds smoothly, allowing him to work at his own leisurely pace. He can now generate some extra income, and it's growing consistently day by day. He has even advanced to the point where he can create a gold coin instead of a silver one, with one gold coin being equivalent to 100 nar, with ample funds at his disposal. Itsuki's sole plan is to indulge and enjoy himself without any other pressing obligations. He envisions a profoundly peaceful life, but instead, his new life is riddled with numerous troubles. However, there is a gradual improvement in his situation. He spends most of his time in the dim alchemy room with the elderly lady Rhine Ritt, who solely points out his errors. He feels a sense of detachment from it all. While he possesses limited knowledge about the town, he harbors a deep curiosity to explore the services it has to offer. Furthermore, he seeks a brothel, yet the challenge lies in the absence of a town map. Consequently, even if he decides to visit such a place, He has no idea which direction to take, apart from knowing the way to the inn and alchemy shop. Then, out of the blue, Yasis appears with Wendy, warmly greeting him with a good morning. Yasis inquires if he can accompany Itsuki on a walk, and Itsuki agrees since he has the day off. Itsuki expresses his desire to explore, but admits he has no knowledge of the city. Yasis suggests that Wendy can serve as a guide for him in the city. He also mentions that Wendy has the ability to alleviate all of Itsuki's fatigue. Consequently, Wendy remains with Itsuki while Yasis departs. On their first day out, they head to a clothing store. Some of the garments appear excessively extravagant on Itsuki, and this marks the first time he has gone shopping with a girl. Wendy decides to try on some clothes as well, and asks Itsuki how she looks in them. The shop girl chimes in, suggesting that Wendy should also try some clothes, as she looks stunning in them. Itsuki instructs the girl to pack both sets of clothes, assuring her that he will take great care of them. He is starting to develop a bit of an attachment to his hostess, especially when she mentions that she will now help relieve his fatigue, as Yasis had mentioned. Wendy takes Itsuki's hand and leads him to a nearby restaurant. Itsuki is thoroughly enjoying this experience. After having some coffee at the restaurant, they venture to the market together. Suddenly, a man appears and calls out to Wendy. He inquires of Wendy why she is present at that location, and Itsuki questions if she recognizes him. Explaining that Wendy is guiding him through the city, Itsuki clarifies that he has no intentions of purchasing her. Wendy, feeling uneasy, informs Itsuki that the man is Dedarl, the son of an influential figure in the city. Dedarl exclaims that he has gathered 120 million nar to acquire her, and queries Itsuki about his capability to afford such a sum to purchase her. He instructs Itsuki to distance himself from Wendy immediately. Itsuki is utterly shocked to discover that Wendy's value is a staggering 120 million nar. The man, in response, begins shouting to summon Yasis. Itsuki firmly grasps Wendy's hand and assures her that even if he hasn't paid for her, he will protect her if she chooses not to stay with the man. Meanwhile, Aina and Sorte are out hunting in the forest. Sorte expresses concerns that no matter how much they hunt, everything will eventually be claimed by Itsuki. Aina attempts to explain that it's all part of their contract, as she has truly accepted Itsuki as her lord. However, Sorte can't conceal her reluctance and tells Aina that she can never be his eternal slave. On the contrary, Itsuki is steadfastly asserting himself as Wendy's current owner. The man begins to boast about his father's significant influence in the city, suggesting that interfering with him would be unwise. Itsuki, however, ridicules both the man and his father, displaying no fear or respect. Neither Itsuki nor the man are willing to relent in their claim over Wendy. Curious, Wendy questions Itsuki if he is genuinely prepared to purchase her. Itsuki is left without an answer, as he does not possess the required funds. Just then, Yasis arrives on the scene, and Dedarl exclaims that he has arrived at the perfect moment. He begins shouting at Yasis, explaining that he has been collecting money to buy Wendy. Yasis, wearing a confident expression, boldly inquires if Dedarl has the required 120 million at his disposal. In response, Dedarl points at Itsuki and questions whether he has provided him with 120 million nar. Dedarl resumes his boasting, even attempting to intimidate Yasis by insinuating potential risks in opposing his father. However, Yasis remains unfazed, and instead asks Dedarl what he plans to do if he defies his father. Itsuki's thoughts drift to Reinrich as he observes Yasis. Dedarl assures Yasis that he will secure the money at any cost, but requests that Yasis keep any potential suitors away from Wendy in the meantime. Yasis smiles and surprises both Dedarl and Itsuki by proposing a battle for ownership of Wendy, leaving Itsuki unprepared for such a suggestion. Meanwhile, Sorta and Aina seek out Reinrich and inquire if she knows Itsuki's whereabouts. Reinrich informs them that he is in the back room. They knock on the door repeatedly before resorting to smashing it open to enter. Inside, they find Itsuki diligently working at a table. They inform him that they have brought the materials he needs, but Sorta's attention is drawn to what's on the table. It's covered in a multitude of shiny rings and jewelry, their beauty impressing her. Itsuki proceeds to recount the events that unfolded in the market earlier that day, explaining everything to them. Sorte, upon hearing about Dedarl's father, becomes agitated once more. She exclaims, emphasizing how influential Dedarl's father truly is in the city. Itsuki, too, begins to worry that he may have gotten entangled with a formidable adversary. Itsuki begins to feel foolish and asks Sorte to refrain from insulting him. but Sorte's annoyance with his actions persists. Aina intervenes, urging Sorte to cease her criticisms and explaining that Itsuki's actions are meant to protect Wendy. Aina, in response, Sorte retorts that he only did it because he desired well-endowed women around him. Aina informs Itsuki that she had also planned to show him the city in the near future, but now it seemed unnecessary since Wendy had already fulfilled that role. Sorte continues to disagree, prompting Aina to inquire about the nature of the competition Itsuki is involved in. Itsuki explains that the goal is to collect 120 million nar initially, but Yasis has lowered it to 80 million nar. Presently, Itsuki only possesses 3.5 million nar, while Didarel already has 50 million nar, which is why Itsuki's target remains at 120 million nar. The time limit is only 1 week, but Itsuki remains far behind in terms of his collection progress. He needs to gather an additional 7 million to secure victory, which explains his effort in crafting those sparkling accessories. Sorta finds it astonishing that Wendy is valued at 120 million, leaving her feeling quite envious since her own worth is a mere 4 million nar. This makes Wendy 30 times more valuable than her, and she begins to wonder if it is solely due to her ample bosom, driven by her jealousy. She once again resorts to pulling Itsuki's hair, but Aina intervenes and separates them. Itsuki then informs them that they need to acquire more materials for him to continue making accessories. Aina offers to accompany him during their free time to assist with the task. Worry gnaws at her as unsettling rumors swirl around Didarel. Itsuki entrusts himself to her care, recognizing that it is time for him to sell some potions at the guild. Aina expresses her newfound admiration for him, convinced that he is truly a good person. Sorta suggests they leave, eager to release her pent-up anger on something or someone quickly. They set off on a hunt, and Wendy can't help but feel anxious. Itsuki is taking a significant risk just for her. However, Itsuki has made a promise that he will succeed at any cost. Doubts linger in her mind about how he will accomplish this, but Yasis reassures her, asserting that this gamble will bring good fortune to both of them this time. Yasis offers reassurance and advises Wendy to remain calm. Wendy's anxiety stems from the fear that Yasis might sell her to Didarel at a high price. Yasis, however, inquires if she is enjoying her day. Wendy responds positively, mentioning that she is having a good time with Itsuki. Yasis encourages her to strive for that happiness once more. Wendy, still anxious, asks Yasis why he came up with such a game. Yasis explains that even though it is challenging to collect so much nar in just a week, he believes Itsuki is not the type of person to abandon her. Meanwhile, Itsuki grows weary from crafting the accessories. Rian Rich suggests he take a short break, emphasizing that overworking will only complicate things for him. She urges him to share the entire story, and Itsuki proceeds to explain everything to her. Rian Rich is aware that Itsuki often seeks out conflicts with others. However, Itsuki mentions that there is something he wants to talk to her about. Itsuki explains that there is a limit to how many accessories he can sell, and he inquires whether he can sell some potions without the guild's assistance. Rian Rich takes a moment to contemplate, then asks if Itsuki knows about the business that Didarel's father is involved in. Itsuki speculates it might be a pig farm, but from Rian Rich's expression, he learns that Didarel's father is, in fact, a pharmacy guild manager. This realization implies that selling potions without the guild's assistance will prove to be extremely challenging for Itsuki. Feeling disheartened, Itsuki recalls that he can seek help from Hayato. He retrieves his guild card, a means of communication with Hayato. Upon contacting Hayato, Itsuki inquires about his well-being, making sure he is okay. Hayato, in the midst of battling a large beast, assures him that he is fine. Itsuki then asks Hayato if he can make use of the items from the magic bag that Hayato provided him. While Hayato's squad battles the beast, Hayato informs Itsuki that he has the freedom to use whatever he likes from the magic bag, though some items are restricted to certain levels. Itsuki acknowledges this, impressing Hayato with his quick learning. During their conversation, Hayato continues to fight the beast. Itsuki mentions that next time he will bring the ore he acquired from the dungeon. After successfully defeating the beast, Hayato expresses his anticipation for Itsuki's contribution. They end the call, and Itsuki marvels at how convenient guild cards are for communication, functioning much like cell phones. Now, it is time for him to get back to work. Itsuki returns to crafting more accessories to sell, focusing on his work. Meanwhile, Sorte and Aina diligently work on their hunting tasks. Aina believes that the materials they have collected should suffice, so she suggests they head back. Sorta, having vented her stress through hunting animals, agrees and is ready to return. As they pause by a pond to bathe, Aina hopes that the materials they have gathered will be sufficient for Itsuki's needs for the time being. Sorte, however, harbors resentment over Itsuki seemingly using two red-fronted girls like themselves in this manner. Aina contemplates the idea of taking a substantial loan to purchase their freedom, reflecting her desire for independence. Despite her situation as Itsuki's slave, Aina doesn't feel overly disheartened. However, Sorta urges her not to be too forgiving. Sorta can't come to terms with Itsuki casually entering their lives as if everything were normal. She holds a belief that men who are attracted to women with large breasts are inherently untrustworthy and views them with suspicion. They arrive at the Alchemy Guild, where Reinrich insists that Itsuki drink something he is reluctant to consume. Itsuki contemplates pretending to drink it and then spitting it out later. However, when he takes a sip, Reinrich punches his stomach and heals him, causing him to ultimately swallow it. Overwhelmed, Itsuki faints and eventually wakes up after a while. He feels his head resting against something soft. Upon waking up, Itsuki is startled to discover that he has been resting his head on Sorta's knees. Anxiously inquiring about Aina's whereabouts, Itsuki's body aches, and he is plagued by hunger. Fortunately, Aina soon arrives and provides Itsuki with some food. Having eaten to his heart's content, Itsuki begins to feel a bit better. However, after consuming the dangerous drug, Itsuki has managed to create a significant number of accessories, but he has no recollection of the process. According to Reinrich, the total value of all the accessories he has made thus far amounts to around 40 million Nor. With 5 days left and a target of an additional 36 million Nor, he still has a considerable amount of work ahead of him. With all his materials depleted, Itsuki racks his brain, desperately trying to devise a way to earn the remaining amount of money he needs. Either clutching the last remaining ore in his hand when suddenly he notices the ore vibrating, an idea sparks in his mind. It is a challenging creation, but he wastes no time in getting to work. Throughout this endeavor, Itsuki crafts numerous items based solely on mental images, discarding some and encountering failures with others. Nevertheless, he persists. Drawing upon all his wisdom and knowledge, he eventually completes a device. He has poured his heart and soul into its production, and now it is finally finished. A pink spinner. Sorta is confused. She asks him what it is, and Itsuki realizes that he cannot explain it in words to her. She asks him if it is a message tool or something, and he tells Enya that she should use it as she earlier mentioned that her shoulder was hurting due to wearing armor all the time. Itsuki takes the rotor and uses it on her shoulders. Aina is surprised by the comforting sensation. She feels a gentle numbing effect enveloping her body, accompanied by subtle vibrations. Aina inquires if she can utilize it, but Sorta then questions Itsuki about the proper usage. Itsuki realizes he must confess the truth. Approaching her, he quietly imparts the actual purpose of the tool into her ear. Sorta is surprised and at a loss for words. She turns away slowly, then picks up a sphere and asks Aina about its function. Aina responds by questioning what Itsuki had done initially. Sorta asks if there's a problem with the tool she had been asking about, and Itsuki tells her that he intends to step outside for a while. Itsuki decides to leave the area, contemplating a visit to a nearby shop with the intention of making a substantial profit. He believes that selling the item will provide him with the means to free Wendy. While wandering about, he encounters 3 individuals who begin to hassle him. They issue threats and demand money, leading Itsuki to deduce that they have been hired by Dadarel. They deny any knowledge of a person named Dadarel, leaving Itsuki with no choice but to stand up and grab his rotor. Swiftly, he makes a run for it, attempting to put distance between himself and his aggressors. In an effort to divert their attention, he pretends there is a gold coin lying on the ground, but the individuals dismiss it as a cheap trick. However, Itsuki quickly activates his pocket of money and scatters it into the air, successfully diverting their attention momentarily. Seizing the opportunity, he makes his escape. However, one of the assailants throws a knife in his direction, aiming to strike him. At the last possible moment, Shiro, the cat girl from earlier, comes to his rescue, saving him from the imminent danger. Itsuki recalls the moment when he attempted to persuade her on the day he first came into this world. Subsequently, the group questions Shiro about her involvement in their tasks. She explains that she will safeguard her master, Itsuki. and warns that anyone attempting to harm him will face dire consequences. One of them lunges forward with the intention of striking her. However, in a sudden move, Shiro evades and unsheathes her sword, preparing to strike him down. Itsuki intervenes, urging her not to kill them. Instead, she delivers a blow with the back of her sword to the first attacker and swiftly launches herself into a series of kicks, toppling the remaining 3 assailants in an instant. Itsuki feels impressed by Shiro's assistance, and he expresses his gratitude towards her. In response, Shiro reveals that Yasis has sent her to protect him. Itsuki, eager to meet her master, asks Shiro to take him to Yasis immediately. However, for Shiro, Itsuki is her master, and she explains that she has not visited his house yet. Itsuki clarifies that he means Yasis, not himself. Shiro then questions whether Itsuki intends to purchase her or something similar. Itsuki replies, assuring her that he cannot buy her, at least not for the time being. Shiro appears disappointed upon hearing this. Subsequently, Itsuki conveys his desire to have a brief conversation with her. Shiro immediately begins heading towards Yasis' residence. Itsuki, realizing he cannot keep up with her pace, asks her to wait, as he will not be able to catch up quickly. Shiro pauses and allows him to catch his breath. Itsuki gently takes Shiro's hand, and she leads him to Yasis' location. Upon their arrival, Itsuki expresses his gratitude to Yasis for sending Shiro to assist him. Shiro, now resting on his lap, appears quite fond of him. Yasis comments on Shiro's affection, to which Itsuki insists that she is merely being friendly. Itsuki then reveals that he has something he wants Yasis to examine. He retrieves the device and shows it to him, explaining its purpose. Yasis inquires about Itsuki's intentions with the item, and Itsuki responds that he wants to sell it. Curious about the asking price, Yasis asks how much Itsuki is willing to sell it for. Itsuki states that he aims to get at least 4 million for it. Yasis counters Itsuki's expectations, mentioning that the item might be worth a maximum of 1 million. However, Itsuki clarifies that he is not referring to the physical tool, but rather the rights associated with it. Yasis inquires if Itsuki truly intends to sell the retailing rights to him, and Itsuki confirms their shared understanding. Recognizing the item's allure and his influence in such stores, Yasis advises Itsuki not to get overly excited. He asks Itsuki to provide specific details of the contract. Itsuki then outlines his proposal. He offers Yasis the rights to the rotor for 40 million, but states that he will handle the mass production. Itsuki leaves the selling price to be determined by Yasis, with the condition that Yasis will pay Itsuki 50,000 nar for every piece sold. Itsuki asks Yasis for his thoughts on the offer. Yasis responds that he understands the terms, but expresses concern about not having a guarantee of recouping his initial investment. He explains that he cannot commit to 40 million for an indefinite right. Yasis acknowledges the product's potential, but remains worried about the uncertainty of Itsuki's ability to meet high demand for mass production. Itsuki attempts to persuade him, assuring that they can restock regularly by having Aina and the others secure the necessary materials. Yasis raises further concerns, mentioning that as a drifter without a home in the town, Itsuki might leave at any time. Itsuki, understanding Yasis' worries, makes a surprising proposal. He offers to use his body as a security deposit, essentially becoming Yasis. Yasis chuckles and finds Itsuki's proposition amusing. However, when Itsuki presses to finalize the slavery contract, Yasis suggests they hold off on that for now. Yasis explains that there is no need to formalize a slavery contract at this time. Instead, he suggests that Itsuki first give him permanent ownership of the pink rotor. He does, however, caution Itsuki that if there is any betrayal, he will never forgive and will hold a grudge. Shifting the conversation to the matter of the 40 million nar, Yasis is ready to discuss it, but Itsuki expresses urgency, stating he needs to leave soon. Before parting, he asks Yasis if he can take Shiro with him after producing 10 rotors. As they continue walking towards the Alchemy Guild, morning has already arrived, and Itsuki feels exhausted. Shiro, too, is visibly tired and inquires about how much further they have to go. Itsuki reassures her that they are almost there and will arrive very soon. He acknowledges that it has been unreasonable for her to escort him. Meanwhile, Dedarl scolds his men for failing to apprehend a single person and makes it clear that they will not receive payment unless they capture their target. The 3 goons feel thoroughly embarrassed by the situation. Their butler intervenes, advising Dedarl not to attempt flashy sabotages, as offending Yasis could lead to negative consequences for them. Dedarl believes he will lose the bet unless he performs a trick. His infatuation with Wendy drives him to do anything to win her over. Wendy anxiously ponders what will transpire on decision day. On the eve of the final day, Itsuki reaches out to Dedaryl for a meeting. Dedaryl is infuriated that Itsuki has the audacity to call him in this manner. Realizing the significant power gap between them, he concludes that he has conceded defeat. Itsuki playfully calls him a silly goose and encourages him to keep making funny sounds. This exchange fuels a heated argument between Dedaryl and Itsuki. Then, unexpectedly, the arbiter of the contest arrives and clarifies that the deadline hasn't passed, but they already have a winner. Dedaryl is astounded to learn that Itsuki has amassed 80 million and emerged as the victor. Yasis officially declares Itsuki as the undisputed victor, bringing the match to a close. Dedaryl, unwilling to accept this outcome, insists that Yase stop jesting. He then directs his accusatory finger at Reinrich, suggesting that she must have provided Itsuki with the money and assistance. In response, Reinrich presents a document containing payment records from various guilds that had purchased Itsuki's accessories, totaling 40 million. Dedaryl, taken aback by this revelation, inquires about the whereabouts of the remaining 40 million. In a sudden turn of events, Reinrich loses her composure, and a man enters the room carrying a box containing the pink rotor. Dedaryl inquires about its significance, and Reinrich reveals that it is the royal seal of the king. Yase explains that the product was developed by Itsuki, and its rights were sold to him for 40 million nar. However, Dedaryl remains skeptical, arguing that if it had royal approval, it could have been sold for a much higher sum. Even Itsuki is surprised to learn that Yasis has secured the king's approval. Yasis clarifies that it was an offer Dedaryl couldn't refuse. Dedaryl erupts and shouts, refusing to acknowledge the result. But at that moment, Wendy herself arrives and implores Dedaryl to accept the decided outcome. Wendy asserts that both her body and soul now belong to Itsuki, and she will never submit to else. Dedaryl's frustration escalates, and his men brandish weapons, causing damage to Reinrich's room, which infuriates her. Aina reassures Reinrich that she can leave the situation to them. Itsuki promises Wendy that Hyena and the girl referred to as Dog Girl will protect her at all costs, although he's somewhat irked by the constant use of that term. Shiro joins the fray to aid in the rescue effort, and the trio engages in combat against Dedaryl's men while Itsuki safeguards Wendy. Itsuki feels a tinge of fear, realizing that he lacks the skills and strength to fight like the others. Nevertheless, he is determined to shield Wendy from any harm and expresses his desire to be by her side since the moment they met. Moved by his words, Wendy tears up. Dedaryl grows increasingly agitated as they struggle against a group consisting of women, children, and the elderly, unable to subdue them. Suddenly, the fighting ceases as everyone turns their attention to Darwin, the supervisor of the West District, who had not anticipated such a fierce battle in this location. Darwin, who turns out to be Dedaryl's father, receives the revelation from Reinrich that his impulsive son had initiated the conflict. Itsuki is astounded to discover that his own father holds such significant influence. Accompanying Dedaryl's father is a petite woman who gazes at Itsuki with a serene and smile. Dedaryl appears fearful upon encountering his father, and Darwin approaches him, chastising him for his actions and instructing him not to address him as father anymore. Itsuki can't help but sense a stark contrast in the aura surrounding Darwin when compared to Yasis and Reinrich. He emanates a menacing presence. Darwin, mistakenly assuming that his son, Itsuki, had been involved in a skirmish over the women alongside Dedaryl, attempts to defend himself by suggesting that Itsuki had cheated in the battle. However, with a chilling glare, Darwin makes it clear that a victory is a victory, regardless of the means. Turning his gaze toward Itsuki, he inquires if Itsuki is the bold and handsome man who had defeated his son. Shiro, fiercely protective of Itsuki, Shiro cautions Darwin that he will face dire consequences if he advances further. Unperturbed, Darwin acknowledges that he has acquired some exceptionally skilled pawns. Darwin instructs Itsuki to have Shiro sheath her weapon immediately, and Itsuki relays the command to Shiro, who complies but remains vigilant, warning that any suspicious move would result in swift action. With a tense atmosphere, they all take their seats and initiate a discussion. Darwin expresses that he has a basic understanding of the situation. Dedaryl, who is bound, faces his father's inquiry about his refusal to admit defeat after his loss. Dedaryl implores his father not to trust the words of the others. Darwin criticizes him as a fool and advises him not to provide excuses. He informs Daryl that they do not share any blood relation. He can't accept someone like him calling him their family. Even as Darwin hints that he deserves very serious consequences, he reminds Daryl of his consistent advice to give his best effort if he wants to succeed, and if he fails, to gracefully accept it. His stepdaughter Mara mentions that she has heard this advice countless times too. Darwin points out that Daryl has made two mistakes. Firstly, he accused Isis even after the battle ended, and secondly, he continued to fight with the Alchemy Guild. He informs Daryl that there is a strict policy of non-hostility towards the Slave Trading Association and the Alchemist Guild, but Daryl has violated it, and now he has to face some form of penalty. He inquires with Itsuki about what should be done regarding Daryl, but Itsuki prefers not to involve himself in the father-son matter. Isis informs Darwin that he would like some monetary compensation for the emotional distress he experienced due to the violence. He also expresses the need for a break to recover both physically and mentally. Darwin asks him how much compensation he would like. Isis responds that he will discuss it with his wife and send an invoice later. Itsuki is shocked to hear that Isis experienced mental distress even though he has a wife. Then, Darwin turns to Reinrich and inquires about her desires. Reinrich initially requests him to repair the wall that his son had torn down. Regarding the penalty, she surprises Darwin by expressing her wish to acquire his bank. Darwin is taken aback by this request, and Itsuki had anticipated that she might ask for something extravagant. Darwin responds by expressing concern that giving her the bank would be too much, and he asks her to suggest an alternative. Reinrich proposes that she should have the authority to interfere with the loans instead. However, she warns Darwin that if he doesn't agree to her terms, she will go to the church and report his son's misdeeds and shady dealings. Itsuki wondered which deal they were discussing. Mara inquired of Reinrich if she was referring to the trafficking of illegal drugs for the Pharmaceutical Guild. Darwin was hearing about this for the first time. He glanced at Daryl and informed him that even if he escaped punishment this time, he would eventually be apprehended. Darwin conveyed that Daryl had caused him a plethora of unnecessary troubles and severely criticized him. He cautioned Daryl that the church would give him a very strict punishment from which he couldn't run or hide. Darwin directed his group to accompany Daryl safely back home. He advised that if Daryl tried to run away or harm himself, they should help him learn a valuable lesson. Itsuki grew more worried about Darwin's well-being. Subsequently, Darwin asked Itsuki how he could assist him. Itsuki merely desired to leave that place and assured Darwin that it would suffice. She stood closely behind Darwin and advised him not to attempt to frighten her master. Darwin gazes at Shiro and informs Itsuki that he possesses excellent subordinates. For a brief moment, he contemplates the idea of claiming them as his own. Itsuki responds by asserting that Shiro's loyalty is unwavering. Darwin then extends an offer, proposing to send Wendy to Itsuki's location with the assurance that no harm will come to her. This proposition sparks a fiery reaction from Itsuki, who retorts that Darwin is no different from his own son. Itsuki insists that Wendy now solely belongs to him and adamantly opposes anyone else taking her. Darwin commends Itsuki's determination and remarks that individuals with such resolve often have short lifespans. Itsuki, displaying unwavering confidence, states that he entered this world for the sole purpose of enjoying life and seeking peace. He firmly declares that he will not depart until he achieves this goal. Darwin comes to the realization that he is indeed a drifter. Itsuki then requests that Darwin only punish him and refrain from entering their lives again, as that is all he desires. Reinrich responds to Itsuki, emphasizing that acceptance or rejection is no longer the issue. He explains that an apology only holds meaning if the person offering it does so with genuine conviction, so that they can move forward without lingering resentment. In response, Darwin, driven by a desire to please Itsuki, asks once more if there is anything he can do. He goes so far as to offer Itsuki his daughter Myra's hand in marriage. Myra, curious about whether Itsuki would be a suitable partner for her, inquires whether he can fulfill her standards. Itsuki firmly declines Myra's offer, stating that he will be unable to fulfill her desires as his primary goal is to attain a stress-free life. Itsuki turns to Reinrich, seeking some guidance. Reinrich advises him not to overthink it and encourages him to speak his mind freely. Itsuki contemplates what he truly desires and then secretly shares his thoughts with Darwin, who subsequently departs. With attention diffused, they all relax and enjoy a soothing cup of tea. Reinrich remarks to Itsuki that he seems to be attracting a lot of trouble, but Itsuki is content that he has managed to resolve everything amicably. He also notes that Reinrich has obtained several things from Darwin without charge. Reinrich feels that providing these benefits is the least he could do to compensate for his foolish son's actions. Aina enters the scene and cautions Itsuki that a messenger from Darwin has arrived, and they are also bringing the items he has requested. Itsuki informs Reinrich that he will return shortly to inspect the goods. Reinrich suggests that Itsuki should come back after he has calmed down, because she has some task for him. Sword interjects, mentioning that normally one would have to work to earn the money for the things Itsuki is about to receive. They engage in a brief argument, but Enya eventually expresses her satisfaction with Itsuki's choices. Itsuki consults a map and determines that, according to its information, the materials he seeks should be located in the vicinity. Finally, he reaches the designated location and discovers a massive, splendid mansion before him, a property now owned by him, courtesy of Darwin. Itsuki feels a bit anxious as he enters, finding it hard to believe that he now owns a house in a completely new world. Even in his previous life, he has never had a place of his own. Upon opening the door, he is surprised to see Wendy already inside. Wendy warmly greets Itsuki and invites him into the house. Curious, Itsuki inquires about why she is there. She explains to him that it is her duty to prepare before her master does. Itsuki is filled with joy upon hearing Wendy refer to him as master. Shortly after, Darwin emerges and inquires if Itsuki is content with his new residence. Itsuki once again seeks confirmation, asking if he truly owns the entire house. Darwin assures him that he never breaks his promises, and that the house contains everything Itsuki could need, from an alchemy room to a basement bath. Darwin holds a deep fondness for the house and feels a tinge of sadness at having to part with it. Itsuki extends his gratitude and shakes hands with Darwin. With the matter regarding Dadarl resolved, Itsuki feels a sense of closure regarding the house. As Darwin bids farewell, he mentions that Yasis will also be visiting the house soon. The following day, Wendy extends an invitation to Itsuki for some tea, and he can't resist her beautiful smile. Itsuki then informs Aina and Sorte that they are welcome to use the rooms as they please, and assures them that he will handle their accommodations. Sorte is puzzled by his sudden kindness, and asks what has prompted this change in his behavior. Itsuki playfully questions if she prefers sleeping outdoors, leaving Sorte with little choice but to accept his offer. With everyone heading to their respective rooms, Sorte eagerly settles into her bed and remarks to Aina how much more comfortable it is compared to the beds in the local inns. Aina adds that there is also a bath, which excites Sorte immensely. Upon hearing this, Aina mentions that Itsuki might already be using it, but Sorte seizes her hand and eagerly leads her to the bath. It has been a while since they have enjoyed a proper bath, and there is a sense of excitement in the air. Itsuki finds relief in finally being able to bathe. As he soaks, memories surface of how he used to pay for spa visits. The only oasis in his previous life or over time was the norm. To make this experience even more perfect, while relaxing in the bath, Itsuki's appetite is sparked, and he begins to crave some tofu to enjoy alongside his bath. Additionally, he ponders the possibility of creating a refrigerator using his alchemical skills, considering it might prove more profitable than the pink rotor. However, as Itsuki turns around, he is taken aback to find Wendy there, her towel barely covering her. Itsuki is taken aback and asks Wendy why she is there. Wendy offers to help Itsuki with bathing, mentioning that she's available to assist him if he needs any help but respects his boundaries. Itsuki politely declines, feeling a bit awkward about the situation, but appreciates Wendy's kindness. Wendy understands and respects his boundaries, expressing her gratitude for his kindness. However, their intimate moment is abruptly interrupted when the door bursts open and Sorte and Aina walk in. Sorte is there to inform Itsuki that it is now their turn to use the bath, but she becomes very upset when she sees Itsuki and Wendy facing each other. She begins to raise her voice at Itsuki, accusing him of being troublesome. Itsuki attempts to clarify to her that it is a misunderstanding, but he notices that Aina also appears disappointed. She promptly departs, leaving Itsuki to attempt to explain that Wendy had only intended to assist him in washing his back. Despite their actions being limited to that, Sorte questions Itsuki's intentions, wondering if he plans to engage in similar activities with her in the future. However, Aina, dressed in casual attire, also enters the room and apologizes for not being present while Itsuki was bathing. She conveys to Sorte that it is their obligation as slaves to assist their master at all times. Wendy chimes in, agreeing with Aina's perspective. Aina also apologizes to Wendy, acknowledging that she had to handle everything on her own earlier. Sorta tries to convince Itsuki to exit the bath, but he firmly insists on staying. Aina makes an effort to explain to Sorte that she is committed to carrying out her duties. However, as Aina moves to explain to Sorta, her towel slips and comes undone for a moment, causing her embarrassment. She quickly adjusts it, apologizing for the mishap. Sorta becomes upset upon seeing Itsuki and expresses her frustration by accidentally hitting Itsuki, surprising them both. Itsuki, startled by the sudden altercation, wonders what has happened to his peaceful bath. Meanwhile, over at the Darwin residence, Mira engages in a conversation with Dharma, another of Darwin's adopted children. Dharma is expressing his apologies for not being present when Didarl tarnished their family's reputation. Mira reassures him that it is not his fault in any way. Dharma goes on to explain that he is particularly interested in meeting Itsuki, who has played a significant role in the entire incident. Mira mentions to Dharma that Itsuki appears to be having a great time while Darwin is handling the business affairs. This piques Dharma's eagerness to meet Itsuki in the near future.
On the following morning, Shiro notices Itsuki mumbling something in his sleep. She settles down nearby, eventually drifting off to sleep herself. When Itsuki awakes, he discovers Shiro still resting on his bed. Wendy arrives and cheerfully greets Itsuki, informing him that breakfast awaits him. Observing Shiro's presence, Wendy inquires about it. Itsuki explains that upon waking up, he found her lying on his bed. Wendy assures Itsuki that she will wake Shiro up soon, but Itsuki requests that Shiro be allowed to rest as long as she wants. The closeness between them makes the situation quite awkward. They proceed to the dining hall, where the breakfast is getting cold and looks incredibly delicious. Without delay, they begin eating. Wendy serves everyone, and Sorte asks if she has prepared all the food by herself. Wendy happily confirms this, and Sorte can't help but feel jealous of her perfection, as it seems she excels in everything. While the food is undeniably delicious, Sorte can't help but notice that the way Itsuki and Shiro are eating seems rather uncivilized, almost like barbarians. Wendy also brings them some tea after the meal. Itsuki expresses his gratitude to Wendy for preparing such a delicious meal for all of them. Wendy responds with a smile, saying that it's always worth it when she receives such compliments from him. Itsuki can't contain his excitement, knowing that he will get to enjoy such tasty food every day. Sorte playfully remarks to Itsuki that it seems like Wendy is the true master of the house, not him. This comment provokes Itsuki to raise his voice, passionately asserting that Wendy is indeed the true master of the house because she provides them with such nourishing and delicious food, essential for their well-being. After the meal, Shiro offers to help Wendy with the dishes, all the while keeping a close eye on her. Wendy, noticing Shiro's gaze, inquires about it. Shiro responds, mentioning that Wendy seems to have changed a bit, but her cooking is even better than what she used to prepare at Yasuza's place. Wendy blushes and remains silent, not offering any response. Itsuki then gathers everyone's attention and in a bashful manner expresses his gratitude to them for all their help. He has prepared some jewelry for each of them, personally crafted by him. Aina, noticing Itsuki's intense blushing, can't help but ask him why he is blushing so deeply. He replies, admitting that it is a little embarrassing for him to make a face-to-face presentation like this for the first time. They all gladly accept the jewelry. Sorte prepares herself for another quest, and Itsuki asks them to stay a bit longer if possible. However, they decline his offer, with Aina explaining that they will settle the debt on their next quest. Sorte also adds that once the debt is cleared, she will finally transition from being a dog girl to a wolf girl. Itsuki bids them farewell, cautioning them to be careful on their journey. Sorte is eager to set off and can't wait to depart. Aina chuckles at Sorte for her comical remark. However, Sorte admonishes her, stating that it is not the right time for laughter. She expresses concern that if Wrench were to return and find them both as slaves, they couldn't predict her reaction. Aina inquires if Sorte is worried about Itsuki. Sorte doesn't respond to the question, choosing instead to focus on her determination to complete the quest. Meanwhile, during that afternoon, in Yasus's presence, Itsuki enters into a contract with Shiro and Wendy. Itsuki extends his apologies to Yasu for persuading him to come. Yasus expresses gratitude to Itsuki for purchasing Wendy and Shiro, and also offers an apology for requesting such a substantial amount to include Shiro. Yasus further assures Itsuki that Shiro will prove to be exceptionally beneficial, and Itsuki reciprocates by mentioning that he will seek Yasus' assistance if any issues arise. With that, Yasus departs. Then, Wendy approaches Itsuki and informs him that it is time for dinner. Meanwhile, Shiro comes and settles down nearby, taking a nap. Wendy inquires why Shiro is sitting in such a manner. Itsuki explains that he has been contemplating whether to cultivate a field in that large garden. Wendy asks if Itsuki has any prior experience working in fields. Itsuki replies that he hasn't worked in fields before, but he is eager to give it a try. He has numerous ideas about cultivating various crops and envisions a happy life together with Wendy and Shiro. Shiro wakes up and asks Itsuki what they are discussing. Itsuki responds, saying that he is talking about the three of them living together happily. Shiro expresses her contentment, noting that she would be delighted to be with her master. They three now truly appear to be a family. Finally, Dharma and Mira arrive at the scene and introduce themselves. Itsuki wonders why they are there, considering the previous matter has been resolved. Dharma extends his apologies to Itsuki, acknowledging that their sudden arrival was unexpected and without prior notice. However, Dharma's constant eerie smile is starting to irritate Itsuki. He mentions that he is responsible for construction and design work, working under his adoptive father. Before Itsuki can introduce himself, Dharma preemptively shares everything about Itsuki, revealing that he has heard a great deal about him from Darwin and Mira. His demeanor resembles that of a carefree salesman. Itsuki's expression turns more serious, and he directly inquires about Dharma's purpose in being there. Dharma responds that he has come to express his gratitude and offer apologies. Itsuki is puzzled by this statement. Dharma clarifies that it pertains to the Dodoro case, which has caused a significant amount of trouble for them. He genuinely feels remorseful for their troubles. Itsuki assures him that he no longer has any issues with the matter, as his father and he have already resolved it. Itsuki also inquires about what has happened to Dodoro afterward. In a disturbingly creepy manner, Dharma asks Itsuki if he truly wishes to hear the details. Itsuki changes his mind and promptly informs Dharma that he does not want to hear any more about it. Itsuki can't help but be surprised by the fact that despite being raised together in the same household, they all have turned out to be very different from one another. Itsuki reassures Dharma that the matter has been resolved and there is no need for further apologies. However, Dharma seems unable to comprehend Itsuki's response and continues to repeat his statements. Mira steps in to offer an explanation, mentioning that Dharma admires Itsuki greatly. Dharma clarified that he was actually attracted to people who were better than him, making his first choice his father, and revealed that Itsuki was third on his list. Itsuki was shocked to hear this revelation. Mira scolded Dharma for getting close to Itsuki, as Dharma had assured her that Itsuki belonged to her. Itsuki couldn't help but feel disappointed that Dharma was gay, despite being so handsome. Dharma, however, told Itsuki that he wouldn't force anyone to love him, and that one day, Itsuki would come to understand. Itsuki firmly replied that such a day would never come. Dharma then asked Itsuki the same question that Dharma had earlier, whether he liked the house. Itsuki gave the same response, saying that he liked the house and Dharma didn't need to worry about it. Mira asked if Itsuki liked the bathhouse. Itsuki replied that he did, but wondered why she was so interested in the bathhouse. Amira revealed that it was because she had designed it herself. Mira explained that she had put in a lot of effort to make the bathhouse enjoyable for her future love. Itsuki wasn't quite sure what to say, but he knew that Japanese people were known for being particular about their baths. Mira then told Itsuki that he could reach out to them whenever he needed guidance when going out in the city, as they could direct him to places where drifters could also have a good time. Itsuki felt a sense of appreciation for Mira's elegance, but couldn't help but wonder how she had been raised by someone like Darwin. After their conversation, they bid their farewells and departed. Shiro's hunger was quite evident, and she informed Itsuki that Wendy had been grilling meat earlier. After indulging in a hearty meal, both Shiro and Itsuki were left feeling pleasantly tired. Wendy then informed Itsuki that she had prepared a bath for him and would join him after he finished. Shiro also expressed interest in joining them. So, the three of them ended up together in the bath, with Itsuki washing Shiro's hair. She was brimming with excitement and even started hopping in joy. Itsuki warned her about the slippery floor, but her enthusiasm got the best of her, and she jumped straight into the pool. Itsuki couldn't help but wonder how Shiro was okay with taking a bath, considering she was a cat. Soon after, Wendy joined them in the bath without any clothes on. An awkward silence hung in the air for a while. Shiro was the first to get out of the pool. Then Wendy asked Itsuki if she could come to his room that night. Itsuki had little choice but to agree, and so that night she went to his room. As they chatted about food, Itsuki found himself reminiscing about his first date in the real world. Wendy, ever so gently, took his hand and reassured him that he didn't need to worry so much when doing something with her. Itsuki, in a moment of vulnerability, admitted that he loved her, and then asked if she felt the same way. Blushing, Wendy confirmed that she did indeed share the same feelings for him. She tells Itsuki that he was better than any other master she had so far. She hugs him and requests him to make her his own, even though she was a contracted slave. Itsuki gets on top, and they were about to share a moment. However, Sortie entered the room, visibly exhausted, and caught Wendy and Itsuki in an intimate moment. She asked Wendy what she was attempting to do with Itsuki. Itsuki panicked and hurriedly attempted to provide an excuse, claiming that he was simply taking care of Wendy because she had fallen ill. Fortunately, Sortie was too tired to pursue the matter any further. After this incident, Itsuki took Sortie to the bathhouse. The next morning, Itsuki was outside, enjoying the warmth of the sunlight. Despite the events of the evening, Itsuki found it difficult to sleep all night. Shiro approached him and relayed Wendy's message that she was calling him for breakfast. While having breakfast, Shiro informed Itsuki that she would be heading to Rainrick for a while. Afterward, Itsuki went about his work for the day. However, before leaving, he made a promise to Wendy that he would make it up to her properly next time. Itsuki traveled to Rainrick and promptly immersed himself in his work, crafting potions. Ray and Rich was genuinely impressed with the marked improvement in the quality of his potions, now reaching the caliber of higher-level potions. During their conversation, Rainrick asked Itsuki if he ever got tired of being surrounded by so many attractive companions. In response, Itsuki recounted the events of the previous night, including Sortie's interruption when things were getting intimate with Wendy. Rainrick became visibly angry upon hearing this, and labeled Itsuki a total disappointment. She criticized him, asserting that he couldn't consider himself a man if he didn't take advantage of the opportunity when the girl was ready for it. Then she informs him that she ought to provide him with some education. She includes something in his beverage and offers it to him. Itsuki inquires if he should truly consume it during the daytime. Rainrick asks if he'd prefer tea or something else instead. Consequently, Itsuki drinks it and questions Rainrick about whether Wendy genuinely meant it when she expressed her affection for him, or if she simply said it because he's her subordinate. Rainrick advises him that women in general excel at deception, but when it pertains to matters of the heart, it's challenging for them to conceal their emotions. Itsuki inquires if she has had similar experiences herself. Rainrick becomes angry and instructs him to be quiet. Consequently, after hearing all of this from her, Itsuki is now prepared to fully engage with Wendy that day. He drinks heavily in excitement and becomes uninhibited. Meanwhile, Rainrick simply smokes a pipe, pondering what will become of him once he regains his senses. Itsuki returns home and is offered some tea since he had dark circles under his eyes, and the tea would help him feel more alert. Shiro inquires if he did wrong, noticing Wendy's intense anger. Itsuki understands the reason for her anger. He had promised her he would stay the night, but now he's returning early in the morning, so it's natural for her to be upset. Then Shiro asks Itsuki if he has any plans for the day, to which Itsuki replies that he doesn't have anything specific in mind. So Shiro suggests that he plays with her, but Itsuki mentions that he was considering assisting Wendy with her work instead. Wendy responds in an unusually dark and somber tone, assuring Itsuki that he doesn't need to worry because she can manage on her own. Itsuki senses that this isn't good news. Wendy is genuinely sad. She had waited for him all night, and he didn't show up. Itsuki spends a considerable amount of time under a tree, contemplating how he can regain Wendy's trust. This situation reminds him of a similar experience in his previous world, where he couldn't dedicate enough time to his girlfriend due to his job leading to significant tension between them. Ultimately, this tension led to their breakup, despite his efforts to persuade her to stay with him. Itsuki makes the decision to apologize to Wendy, regardless of the outcome. However, Wendy takes the initiative and approaches Itsuki, asking if she can sit beside him. Itsuki readily grants her permission, and for a while, they sit in silence. Itsuki stands up, bows before her, and apologizes for not keeping his promise. They both forgive each other, especially when she reveals that she had waited for him throughout the entire night. Wendy asks him to promise that he will make it up to her properly next time. Itsuki feels immense relief that Wendy has forgiven him. Shiro arrives and informs them that she's quite hungry. Wendy assures Shiro that she will prepare lunch shortly. After a satisfying meal, Itsuki asks Shiro to join him for some time. Following lunch, Shiro inquires about what Itsuki needs her help with. He explains that he has been protected ever since he arrived in this world, leaving him wondering if he can learn to protect himself. And that's why he devised a means to safeguard himself. He initiated a portal in his hand and inserted a hammer into it, causing the portal to consume the hammer completely. Impressed by this, Wendy inquired if this ability was unique. Itsuki then explained that it was a form of space magic. He recounted how, upon arriving, he had the idea to possess an item box, which he obtained from the goddess. However, since Hayato had given him a magic bag with similar capabilities, he hadn't used it until recently. One day, as his level increased, he decided to test the spatial magic. Activating it caused an invisible barrier to materialize around him. When he attempted to touch Itsuki, the barrier prevented her from making contact. Itsuki made it transparent, but it still prevented physical contact with anyone. Itsuki became curious about whether the barrier could withstand attacks, so he instructed Shiro to launch a full-force attack against him. Initially, Shiro issued a warning, but then she put her heart into a powerful strike. However, the barrier successfully blocked the entire attack, leaving Itsuki unscathed. Encouraged by Itsuki, Shiro launched a series of consecutive strikes with all her might. This time, the barrier eventually shattered. Itsuki pondered whether it was less durable than he'd hoped, and whether it could withstand magical attacks. Wendy offered her assistance, mentioning her knowledge of a spell that could help. Itsuki gave her the go-ahead, and he created a new barrier. Utilizing her magic, Wendy unleashed a high-velocity water bullet at Itsuki. Fortunately, Itsuki wasn't sustaining severe injuries or facing mortal danger, but the durability of the barrier was undoubtedly in doubt. It provided a means for him to protect himself in emergencies, which was a relief. Wendy approached him and inquired about his well-being. Itsuki stood up and proposed the idea of going out into the town at night to the group. Shiro displayed great excitement upon hearing this, and expressed his gratitude as a form of thanksgiving for their assistance that day. Meanwhile, Aina and Sorte were diligently hunting monsters in the vicinity. Aina prepared the food for them, and when they both tasted it, it was evident from their reactions that it was quite bland. Sorte reassured Aina that at least it was an improvement from the last time. Aina felt very disheartened, but Sorte tried to lift her spirits by emphasizing that it didn't have to be perfect, just palatable. Aina explained her fear that, as a woman, she wouldn't be able to satisfy Itsuki. She genuinely wanted to be helpful to him. On the other side of the second wall, Ren was there, requesting the guards to allow her passage. She informed them that she had a crucial task within the town. However, the soldiers informed her that they had received orders from the border fort not to let her through if she arrived. Ren wore a pitiful expression and informed the guards that she had no money left to return.